A police officer mercilessly executes a man's wife right before his eyes, after he refuses to disclose the location of innocent civilians. The film begins in a city under heavy military control, where chaos erupts as a deadly virus spreads, plunging the residents into panic. With the crisis escalating, most of the population is left with no choice but to flee, desperately seeking refuge in another city in hopes of survival. However, their escape is swiftly thwarted when the military imposes a strict lockdown, trapping the residents inside. Anyone who dares to resist is swiftly arrested and sent to an isolation camp. The scene then shifts to Stone, a ruthless commander, mercilessly torturing Susan, the wife of John, a soldier who defied orders. John had secretly aided civilians in escaping from the camp, and when Stone uncovered his betrayal, he wasted no time in retaliating. With cold precision, he threatened to kill Susan unless John revealed the location of the fugitives. When John refused to break his silence, Stone showed no mercy. He executed Susan right in front of him. 3 years have passed, yet the agony of that moment still lingers, haunting John's every thought. Living in the shadows, he has spent years sharpening his combat skills, driven by an unyielding thirst for vengeance, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Rumors circulate that John was once part of the Special Forces under Stone's command, a unit infamous for carrying out a brutal massacre, slaughtering hundreds of innocent civilians simply because they were suspected of carrying the deadly virus. In truth, the virus was nothing more than a fabricated excuse, Stone's way of masking his sinister agenda for personal gain. Innocent civilians fell victim to his greed and cruelty. Unable to stand idly by, John courageously condemned his superiors' barbaric actions. But rather than being listened to, he was branded a traitor. During routine tests, doctors made a groundbreaking discovery: John possessed a natural immunity to the deadly virus. Recognizing the potential to save the city, the medical team swiftly formulated a plan to develop a vaccine using his blood. However, John refused to be treated like an experiment and fiercely resisted. After a brutal struggle, he managed to break free from the detention camp, vanishing into the depths of the dense forest. Alone in the wilderness, the ghost of his wife's tragic death never left him, her final moments replaying endlessly in his mind. Grief weighed heavily on him, but so did guilt. The blood of innocent civilians once stained his hands, and the burden of his past sins was inescapable. Just as he was sinking deeper into despair, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. Lying motionless on the ground before him was an injured woman, barely clinging to life. John swiftly carried the woman back to his cabin, doing his best to stop the bleeding and tend to her wounds. By morning, she finally regained consciousness and introduced herself as Maria. As he examined her injury, John made a troubling discovery: a bullet was still lodged deep in her body, a grim reminder of her desperate attempt to flee from the military. With steady hands and precise skill, he carefully extracted the bullet. But as he took a closer look, his breath caught in his throat. This was no ordinary bullet, it was a high-tech tracking device. As soon as John removed the bullet, Maria lost consciousness. While tending to her wound, his eyes caught something unusual: a barcode etched onto her wrist. An unmistakable mark that she was being hunted by the Special Forces. He finally came to. John's voice was firm and unwavering. "You can stay here to recover, but not for long. Once you're well enough, you need to leave." He had no interest in getting involved in more trouble after all. He was already a wanted man himself. 2 days later, a Special Forces team followed the GPS signal straight to John's cabin. They demanded to know Maria's whereabouts, but John remained silent, his expression unreadable. As their patience wore thin and they moved to search the cabin, he struck without warning, swift, precise, and deadly. In mere moments, the soldiers lay motionless on the ground. At the same time, Maria launched her own surprise attack, swiftly taking down one of them. As she watched John fight with lethal efficiency, a realization dawned on her: he was no ordinary man. Maria was eager to learn more about John, but he remained distant, refusing to share anything about his past. Meanwhile, word of the fallen Special Forces soldiers quickly reached their 2 superiors, Roy and Lucy. Understanding the severity of the situation, they wasted no time in reporting directly to their commander, Stone, the ruthless man who had brutally executed John's wife at the start of the film. John focused all his efforts on fortifying their hideout, transforming it into an impenetrable stronghold. He knew the Special Forces wouldn't let this go. They would return, and they would come with a vengeance. Late at night, as the fire crackled between them, Maria finally broke her silence. She revealed the truth behind her relentless pursuit. Like John, her DNA carried immunity to the deadly virus, making her a prime target for the special forces, who sought to exploit her for their own sinister agenda. Maria refused to surrender her DNA, knowing all too well the military's true intentions. Their goal was never to save the masses. The vaccine would be reserved only for the elite, while the infected citizens would be abandoned to die. This wasn't a mission of mercy, it was a weapon to tighten their grip on the city. By sheer fate, she had crossed paths with John, another rare individual with natural immunity. But there was one heartbreaking difference between them. John had been forced to watch his wife murdered in cold blood, powerless to stop it. Maria confessed that she had once been a thief, and was imprisoned for her crimes. However, when the virus outbreak struck, it wiped out most of the prisoners and guards inside the facility. She was the only one who survived, not by chance, but because of her rare immunity. At dawn, John began training her in weapon handling, knowing that she needed to be prepared. The fight was inevitable, and he couldn't always protect her. Not long after, 3 special forces operatives emerged from the dense forest, their shadows creeping toward the hideout like harbingers of war. John quickly spotted the approaching enemies and wasted no time formulating a plan. He deliberately stepped into the hut, luring them into his trap. As they closed in, he struck first. His shots were swift and precise, instantly taking down 2 of them. However, Maria wasn't as lucky. One of the remaining soldiers caught sight of her, seized her, and pressed a gun to her head, using her as a human shield. He ordered John to surrender, but John remained calm. Hidden in the shadows of the hut, he took careful aim. In a split second, he fired, striking the soldier cleanly. As the man staggered, John stepped forward and finished him off without hesitation. When the 3 soldiers failed to report back, their superiors wasted no time in deploying another team to track down Maria. However, they remained uncertain about one crucial detail: was her protector truly John, the former Special Forces operative once feared as a formidable and lethal warrior? Meanwhile, John and Maria were ready. They knew this was just the beginning, and another attack was inevitable. It was only a matter of time before the hunt resumed. John picked up a weapon he hadn't touched in years. As he felt its familiar weight in his hands, he knew the real battle was about to begin. Before making the final preparations, he sent Maria to fetch water from a nearby lake. However, the moment she arrived, an ambush was already in place. Special Forces operatives surrounded her from all sides. Believing they had secured their most valuable target, Roy reached for his communicator to report to Stone. But before he could make the call, John emerged from the shadows, his shots swift and precise, eliminating each enemy in an instant. Once again, he had arrived just in time to save Maria. Unfortunately, Roy survived the encounter. Wasting no time, he reported everything to Stone and urgently requested reinforcements. Recognizing Maria as a top priority target, Stone issued a direct order: capture her alive at all costs. Soon after, a newly dispatched unit arrived and managed to seize Maria. However, she refused to go down without a fight. Seizing the moment, she launched a brutal counterattack, systematically taking down the entire squad with relentless precision. When news of the catastrophic failure reached Stone, his fury was uncontrollable. This time he sent an even larger force with a single directive: eliminate the one responsible for Maria's escape. It wasn't long before the new wave of soldiers reached John's cabin, fully prepared for an all-out battle. Gunfire erupted in a relentless storm as another intense battle unfolded. But this time, John was ready. Armed with a well-devised strategy and an intimate knowledge of the terrain, he turned the battlefield into a death trap. The Special Forces operatives, unfamiliar with the rugged surroundings, found themselves at a severe disadvantage. Every move they made led them straight into John's carefully orchestrated ambushes. One by one, they fell just like the comrades before them, systematically eliminated with deadly precision. Dozens of reinforcements arrived, determined to eliminate their target. As they scoured the area, they stumbled upon a hidden tunnel near John's cabin and quickly reported their discovery to Lucy. But before they could act, Maria, already anticipating their move, launched a swift and ruthless attack, taking them down one by one. When the gunfire finally fell silent, not a single soldier remained standing. News of the devastating loss soon reached Stone. Realizing his previous strategies had failed, he knew it was time for a new approach. This time he would turn the tunnel into a deadly trap, using it to lure John into his own demise. While patrolling the forest, John unexpectedly crossed paths with Roy, once a trusted friend, now a sworn enemy. Without hesitation, the two engaged in a brutal showdown. Roy was a formidable opponent, launching relentless attacks that forced John to retreat again and again. Each blow sent him crashing to the ground, making it seem as though he wouldn't rise again. Meanwhile, Maria had been captured, her fate hanging in the balance. But John refused to surrender. Gritting his teeth, he pushed through the pain and forced himself back to his feet. He couldn't afford to lose Maria, not now, not ever. Meanwhile, Roy led Maria to the tunnel, where a squad of soldiers stood by, awaiting further orders. Unbeknownst to them, John had intercepted a fallen soldier's communication device and overheard Stone's directives. Realizing the enemy was regrouping at the tunnel, he wasted no time and rushed to the scene. However, he was walking straight into Stone's trap. The moment he stepped inside, Roy was already waiting. With no way out, the two men launched into a brutal, no-holds-barred fight, one that could only end with a single survivor. Meanwhile, Stone and his army lay in wait at the end of the tunnel, ready to spring their ambush once Roy delivered Maria. Back in the fight, John struggled against Roy's relentless attacks, slowly losing ground. But he remained patient, waiting for the perfect moment to counter. When the opportunity finally came, he struck with precision, overpowering Roy and ending the fight. Wasting no time, he freed Maria and rushed toward the tunnel's exit. However, just as they emerged, they found themselves face to face with a heavily armed squad blocking their path. Stone's trap had been set. Another brutal showdown was inevitable. With no alternative, John and Maria had no choice but to fight their way through. Relying on their superior combat skills, they swiftly eliminated the Special Forces team. But before they could catch their breath, another squad arrived, sealing off all possible escape routes. Thinking fast, John pulled the pin on a smoke grenade and hurled it into the midst of the enemy, engulfing the area in a dense fog. Using the cover of smoke, he grabbed Maria's hand and sprinted toward the exit. However, just as they were about to break free, a gunshot rang out. Lucy's bullet tore into John. He staggered for a moment, but driven by sheer determination, pushed forward without stopping. John and Maria hurried into a nearby room. Before stepping out, John turned to her with a firm gaze. "Stay here, don't come out until it's safe," he instructed. He was determined to draw the enemy away. Without hesitation, he left, ready to lead them out of the tunnel. But the moment he stepped outside, he realized the grim truth: he had walked straight into a trap. At the far end of the tunnel, Stone and his heavily armed squad were already waiting. Outnumbered, and with no escape, John had no choice but to lower his weapon and confront the man who had mercilessly taken his wife's life. At that moment, Stone finally understood why capturing Maria had been such a struggle. John had been protecting her all along. He stepped closer, his eyes filled with cruel amusement, and demanded to know Maria's whereabouts. But John, bloodied and battered from relentless torture, refused to utter a single word. Frustrated by his defiance, Stone prepared to inflict more pain. Instead, John met his gaze and issued a challenge: one final fight, man to man. Stone, his pride on the line, smirked and accepted without hesitation. In the end, John overpowered Stone in front of his entire squad. A heavy silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by Stone's ragged breathing. Refusing to accept defeat, he struggled to his feet and barked an order for a weapon. But his soldiers remained still, their expressions hardened with years of suppressed resentment. They had endured his cruelty long enough. His reign of terror ended here. Furious, Stone lunged forward, seizing a gun from one of his men. But the moment he pulled the trigger, a fatal realization dawned too late: the weapon had been sabotaged. The shot rang out, and the bullet tore through his own body, sealing his fate. Just then, Maria emerged from the shadows, gripping two grenades tightly. Her voice was steady but firm as she issued her ultimatum: if Lucy didn't release John, she would take them all down with her. Reluctantly, Lucy conceded. Maria was taken back to headquarters, while John was left behind in the desolate forest, his fate uncertain. Yet no one suspected the crucial act that had already taken place before their separation. John had secretly slipped Maria a sample of his blood. It was his last hope, ensuring that the potential cure would not fall into the hands of those who sought to control it for their own ruthless agenda. In the end, the vaccine derived from John and Maria's blood gave the people a chance to rebuild their lives and restore peace to the city. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit like to show your support. For the full experience, watch the entire movie so you don't miss any thrilling moments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated on our latest exciting videos.